Hey you guys, this is the Couplings Fire podcast. Here's a couple of things you might need to know or maybe you just forgot. I'm Taylor, a volunteer firefighter and also a firewife to my favorite firefighter. Join me as I talk anything and everything fire related. I don't claim to be an expert. I just love to talk fire, and everything I say is my own opinion. My goal? To inspire anyone listening to take the steps to bettering their department, however they can. Let's get on to the episode. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Couplings Fire podcast. I am Taylor. Nice to meet you. If you guys want to interact with me at all, back and forth, I actually like interacting with people. Go ahead and message me over on Facebook or Instagram at Couplings Fire Podcast. You can also find me on Clubhouse at Couplings Pod. Come over there to Clubhouse, chat with us if you get a chance. It's a lot of fun on there. Otherwise, shoot me an email, couplingsfirepodcast@gmail.com. If you guys have any questions or anything you'd like talked about in the podcast, or if you have an idea of somebody who would be a good co-host for an episode or someone to interview, please let me know. Or if you yourself would like to be on, reach out. I'm kind of doing 3 different types of episodes right now. I'm doing solo episodes by myself. I'm doing just straight interview episodes with people, just interviewing them about either their mission or what they're doing or their personal experiences with different things. And I'm also doing what I'm calling a traveling co-host. So I get which basically is I figure out a topic I want to talk about and I find somebody I think would fit that topic. And it's not an interview style, right? But we talk back and forth like we would be co-hosts for an episode. And it's just kind of a nice way to still get the banter back and forth and good conversations happening back and forth without having a solid forever co-host on this thing. Anyways, I've been really loving doing this podcast. It has overall made me so much more confident in my knowledge and abilities. Within the last, how many months have I been doing this? Since February, so a little over 6 months now, so about 7 months. Well, this is episode 31. So it's kind of hard to believe we're finally at 31 episodes. It seemed like just yesterday we started this thing. That Chris and I started this thing. So yeah, it's exciting. This is really exciting. I don't know what's gonna happen when a year comes up. I'm just gonna be like, wait, what? A year? A year already? Where did the time go? So no, it's this podcast has brought up so many opportunities to talk with people and so many opportunities to learn and grow. And I've been excited to take as many as I can, and I can't wait for anything new that comes up. Just because I love the wide world of the fire service. And this is one avenue that has brought me to meeting new people. And I am 100% an extrovert. I've done a stay-at-home job for a long time. And it was great. And it's still great. I'm still doing it right now. But I get re-energized by talking to people, right? That is the definition of an extrovert, is you are re-energized by being around people and talking with them. And it's been so nice, especially the last couple months. Really, really getting in contact with people and getting to know them and just interacting with more of the world than I previously did. Sorry if you guys hear some noises in the background. I am currently outside again because it is another stinking gorgeous day. I think another high of 82 or something. It's perfectly sunny outside, a little bit of breeze. So I'm going to take advantage of these outdoor sessions of podcasting as I can. Alright, so something I want to bring up before I actually get into the main topic today. So Chris actually found this. And he sent it to me, and I'm like, oh, that's perfect. Oh, this is what we strongly believe. So this is from Nation of the Fearless. It's an Instagram page. And it says, what you listen to and who you listen to is what you become. And I want to touch on that a little bit, because Chris and I have talked before about how that is our view. That is what we truly believe. Who you spend your time around, who you're friends with, what type of shows you watch, what type of movies you watch, what type of songs you listen to, the energies of the people you're around. That's who you end up becoming more like, right? It's not going to change you completely, don't get me wrong, but that is who helps mold you and mold your attitude for everything. So if you're always listening to negative stuff, or if you're always watching negative things on TV or whatnot, you're going to be more negative as a person. You're going to see those tendencies come out more often, and it's going to start changing your personality. It's going to be the way you start looking at things. Whereas if you're gonna be around people who are more happier every day or more positive, and if you're gonna listen to podcasts that try to do a more positive spin on things, like that, if you're watching funny TV shows, it changes your mood in the moment, right? That's number one. But over time, it plays a subconscious game with you, where you actually start acting and gravitating towards those tendencies. And I've noticed this myself a lot, because if I get in a kick, and I love crime shows. Don't get, I love Criminal Minds stuff. That's probably like my top one I like to watch. I love horror movies and things like that. You guys heard about last week. I love it. But if I watch too much of that at once, I realize that I'm kind of in a bad mood a lot more often. Like, around lately, like I and you guys are like, how could you be in a bad mood, Taylor? You're like always positive. But I'm in a lot worse of a mood that way. And if I spend time around people who are in bad moods, I myself I feel it coming up, and I just don't want to be happy right then, And so if you constantly do that day after day after day, you're going to be in a bad mood. Not on purpose, it just happens. Whereas if you're going to listen to upbeat music and you're going to, play, I don't know, even Family Guy or something, like just stuff like that. Like, well, here's another take. Let's say Family Guy or some other shows that are a little more either raunchy or different things, right? That affects your personality too. Because if you're spending your time listening and watching to raunchy things or to a certain type of humor or whatever, you're going to gravitate towards more of that in your life. Why do you think parents think it's so important to keep kids away from certain types of shows and things, It's because that does affect them, especially in those years of everything developing, your brain developing. That actually impacts your brain in the long term when you introduce it at that age. But it really does. So if you want to be, I guess, long story short with all this, if you want to be somebody who's positive a lot more often, if you want to be somebody who works out a lot more often, if you want to be a go-getter, if you want to be very trustworthy, if you want to have integrity, if you want to be very faith-focused or family-focused, whatever your goal is, those are the people and things and shows and music that you need to spend your time around. Not saying you can't spend time around other people or listen to that, but every time you spend with those people is another minute that you're getting affected by that and that you're being influenced by that. So, yeah, just a quick little take on that, because we've never been able to find the words before that speak to exactly what we think. And that was it. And again, for you guys, that says what you listen to and who you listen to is what you become. All right. Off of that little pre-episode, little nugget there. So this week, I thought, I'm kind of like on the track of a certain type of episode apparently the last couple weeks, but I've been thinking about this a lot lately. So this is hopefully going to be a two-parter. We're going to find out for sure. Oh my goodness, somebody's grilling. Oh, I'm so jealous right now. Okay. That's, okay. Sorry. It smells so good. Anyways. Man, I love Nebraska. You get people grilling in the middle of a weekday. It's great. Anyways, back on subject. I'm hoping this is going to be a two-parter. Now, the second part is not going to come out next, right? It's probably going to come out maybe either weeks or even a month or so down the road, okay? But I want to talk about anxiety in the fire service. You hear a lot of people talking about depression, and I do think that is an important topic. But I think anxiety is a different battle. They can oftentimes go hand in hand. If you have one, you can easily develop the other. But I want to focus just on anxiety because that is stuff that I have a lot of experience with. So I'm going to talk about this. I want to talk about my case. I'm not going to talk about statistics. I'm not going to talk about this is what's right for you or this is how every person goes through it. I'm not going to tell you this is what it looks like for everybody. That's not any of that, right? That's not what this is about. This is going to be my journey with anxiety. How it started, why it started, how it changed things for me, and how I have to work through it, basically, right? And what I deal with when I go on a fire scene or just even to the station or other things. We're going to get into all of that. I'm hoping for a part 2, I'm actually going to be talking with somebody who has a little bit more experience than me with helping people with anxiety. And we're going to get their take on things and just kind of dig deeper into it. So for right now, this will be part 1 of anxiety in the fire service. All right, here we go. Reminds me of the Joker off of Dark Knight. Here we go. I haven't seen that movie in a long time, and I'm pretty sure that's kind of how it goes, right? Oh man, I need to watch that again. Heath Ledger was a fantastic Joker. So I love a lot of different Jokers. Well, not really that. I love a lot of different Batman villains. I'm a huge Marvel fan, yes, but I grew up with Superman. I grew up with Batman. Before we get into the actual episode, now I don't remember too much of Jack Nicholson's Joker. I want to go back and watch that again, but I have not seen any of the new Joker movies or anything. So like, I haven't seen Suicide Squad and stuff like that. I haven't seen the newest one with oh crap, I can't remember his name. Oh, he was in Walk the Line. I can see his face. Sorry. Anyways, I haven't seen those ones, so I can't compare to those, but I really loved Heath Ledger as the Joker. That was a really good one. Now, all-time favorite villain for Batman would probably have to be Jim Carrey's Riddler. He was freaking fantastic in that. Just saying. Okay. Anyways, moving on. Anxiety and the fire service. So, what anxiety means for me? Me specifically, it makes me extremely not confident, right? I had enormous anxiety starting this podcast, starting the whole podcast, right? When we started back in February. I had to mull over it for months before I actually decided to start recording. So it makes me very not confident with anything, even though I know the stuff. I know the information. I know I can do it. I practice it, but I second guess myself every step of the way. And I get imposter syndrome, basically. It keeps me from wanting to respond to calls. I know that sounds stupid, but when I was on my last department, there were times when the pager went off, and my anxiety got so bad that I'm wondering, should I even go? Am I going to know what to do on this type of a call right away? Am I going to be confident with my abilities to do this type of a call? You know, should I go? Will I make things worse if I go? That's kind of stuff that went through my head. Every time I'm on the call, every time I'm around the station, I always think, will I screw up? How bad am I going to screw up this time? What's going to be the lasting memory that's going to be in everybody's brain about me? Am I going to get someone hurt on accident? You know, what if my abilities aren't where they should be and I get somebody hurt? Will everybody see me for only my mistakes? Right? They're never going to remember the good times, right? They're never going to remember when I do the right thing. They're never going to remember when I did awesome on pulling that hand line, when I did awesome on suppressing the fire. They're not going to remember any of that stuff. They're going to remember the mistakes I make. And that's all they're going to see me as, is every time I made a mistake. It's more than just being a worrywart when you have anxiety. And it is not something that ever really turns off. Even when I'm comfortable in a situation, or I seem comfortable in a situation, I still have this background anxiety that's running at 1,000,000 miles an hour. The way my brain works, really, the best way I put it, and I don't know if I've mentioned this before in an episode or not, so I'll mention it here, but basically imagine 3 different trains in my brain running parallel to each other. And all these trains have a bunch of boxcars. And on the boxcars, they're all open, so you can be one of those cool, like, either Wild West robbers, or just imagine Captain America in Winter Soldier and jumping between between trains and stuff like that. Something like that, right? So you're able to jump however you want to throughout these trains. And it may make sense, it may not make sense for the time. I may be freaking out about something completely irrelated during a conference call for something, or I could be worrying about the last thing that I should be worried about. Like, what if this person doesn't like my voice, or what if what I'm wearing is not professional enough or something, or what if everyone remembers that time I said that weird thing and everyone got silent for a second, in this awkward pause. And I think the awkward pause is about me, about what I said, instead of just being a pause in a conversation. Those happen. So it's over analyzing of everything, and just basically always unsure of yourself and always unsure of where you stand, and what everyone's thinking of you. It's not just what people are thinking. That's where my brain tends to go when it comes to anxiety. But it can be just little things like, let's say sometimes when I'm driving, I was driving on the interstate last night coming back from shooting a volleyball game. And I was driving and we were going on a curve, and I'm just like, what would happen if I accidentally, lost control of the steering wheel and flipped? And, okay, where am I? How would I tell them where I am? Whose response area am I in? Who's going to come? I wonder who's actually on call, who's actually going to be coming to help me, is it going to be someone I trust, and are they going to know what to do, and how's Chris going to find out, and stuff like that. Like, that is the extent of what somebody with anxiety goes through all the time. Some passing little thought that somebody else would be like, oh, that would really suck if I crashed here or something, Some people get those. But what somebody with anxiety does is that they go through every little avenue of worrying on that train of thought till it's ran out. Then they'll move to the next thing. And that's kind of my day. So that is what mentally happens to me when I go through anxiety. But now I want to talk about some of the physical symptoms that I get. Most of the time I am pretty fortunate that my physical symptoms aren't that bad. But I definitely do get them when I have an overwhelming something come up. I'm not going to say a full-fledged panic attack, because I will touch on that in a second. But I get very jittery overall. I can't sit still. I fidget like crazy all day. So I guess that's kind of a symptom that is present most of the time. Yeah, I fiddle with my ring and stuff. I probably should get one of those fidget rings that you can spin around. That would actually help, probably. So to use my nice wedding ring. But I fidget so much. I can't help it. I need something to do all the time. I hate sitting still, because the moment I sit still, I can't relax. So, like, if I'm trying to sit down and relax and watch TV, I can't just do that most of the time. I'll have to either be playing a game on my phone, or I have this kind of little coloring app on my phone. I do Sudoku a lot. Something to kind of rein my brain in. So, definitely racing thoughts. And it's kind of hard to get away. So, I guess it's not really physical, but moving on to some other physical symptoms that I get. A big one is I kind of get brain fog. I know what to say, but I can't find the words. Everything just kind of starts getting fuzzy and going blank, and I can't figure out what to say. Another major one for me that happens a lot is my throat feels like it's swelling up and it's getting hard to breathe. It's a weird feeling, let me tell you. The first time it happened, it made me a little scared. That's when I know that something's hitting me pretty hard, though, is when I'm getting that feeling like it's getting hard to swallow, getting hard to breathe, in my throat specifically. My heart races. I definitely have a higher heart rate when I have my anxiety, and so it does elevate quite a bit. And then I'll get really, really quiet. That's something I tend to do a lot. I will kind of stare off into space. I'll get really quiet. I will just more or less try to blend in as much as I can, not to bring attention to myself. A lot of times I feel sick to my stomach. I won't want to eat because I'll feel like if I eat, I'm going to get sick. There was actually a span of a few days where I had a lot of trouble eating, and this was when before I knew I had anxiety, before I knew it was a problem. I had about a week or two where I really couldn't eat much. I couldn't keep much down. And it's all from the stress and worry, and it messes with your systems, basically. It's a whole body thing when you go through anxiety. For an actual panic attack, I've had these a few times. I'm fortunate not to have them that often, but it feels. I don't know what a heart attack feels like, but it feels like a heart attack. I will attest to that. There was one night, it happened in the middle of the night, and I felt like I was going to pass out. I felt a sharp stinging pain. I couldn't breathe. I was so dizzy and lightheaded and nauseous, and I just basically almost collapsed on the bathroom floor. And I was freaking out. I was really freaking out. I tried to get myself calmed down, and went through a shower, went back to bed, and I woke Chris up, and I was like, hey, you need to check my heart rate and my blood pressure and everything. Like, I am really worried here, that something big is happening. And everything was normal. Everything was normal. And it's not uncommon for people who have anxiety and panic attacks to go into the hospital, into the ER, thinking they have a heart attack. It is extremely common. Best way I can put it for you guys, and it does an amazing job at showing how fast it can come and it can go. Watch Iron Man 3. Okay? Tony Stark goes through it in there, and it's not perfect. It's not the perfect example, but it feels like that. He has Jarvis. Well, wait, no, it's not Jarvis at that point. Whatever her name is in there. But he has her Friday. That's it, Friday. One of the days of the week. He has Friday check out everything on him, making sure he's all good to go, making sure, he's really worried. He's like, check all my vitals, am I having a heart attack? And she's like, no, you're fine. You're fine, And it happens to him several times in the movie when he's having different things happen. And there are other points when he should be having anxiety attacks, panic attacks, and he doesn't. when he really should be, when everyone else is like, wait a second, he's being so flip-floppy. When does it affect him? When doesn't it? Sorry, I am talking fast. But that's how anxiety works. Is you don't know when it's going to come on. It doesn't always come up when you expect it to. It's not like clockwork. It's not something you can time, and it's not something you can always see coming. Now, a lot of times, yeah, you can find your triggers, and we'll talk about that coming up. But there's no rhyme or reason to it sometimes, and it just happens. And even on things you wish it wouldn't happen for, it still comes up sometimes. So, anyways, that's just a brief kind of overview of the physical symptoms that I've seen with my anxiety. Okay, so how did this start? How did I get anxiety? It doesn't just happen to people. At least it didn't for me. I believe it came out of a stem from actually owning my own business and having everything relied on me. And just over time, the stress got so bad that I worried about every little thing more and more. And then it just seeped into my everyday life. I didn't have a good separation between business life and home life. And when you have a job, right? When you I had a job, but when you work out of the house and you work for somebody else, it's usually a lot easier to separate the two. But when you're kind of doing both at the same time, it's not. And I can see how that would be the same for especially career people in the fire service too. You live half your life at the fire station, if not a third to half your life there, and it basically seeps into your everyday life because you kind of have no choice. So that's kind of how it started for me and how it developed. It just kept getting worse and worse and worse, and it was just little bits over time, like we talked about in that episode where we interviewed Shane Smith. Just little drop in the bucket, and you don't really know which one did it, but one of them did. One of the little things did it. And a lot of the stuff that went with the fire department side, because that anxiety actually kind of came on pretty quick for that one, was being the only girl in the department. That did not help anything, let me tell you. Everyone was very receptive of me being there, but I felt as if I would always be at a lower level than everybody else. Even though that never got talked about, that never was official, and no one said that, but it's what I felt. Because you are seemingly, I'll say, seemingly inadequate going into a guy's world like that, especially when you're the only female in there, and especially when someone like me who didn't really do manual labor or anything, goes into something like this, and I'm constantly doing new things. Right? I'm constantly pushing myself and constantly trying to be on that same level as everybody else. It was exhausting, and it's still exhausting, even though I love it. But every time I'd go to do something, I would worry so much about not screwing up because I don't want to let people down. I want to prove myself that I developed the anxiety so quickly in the fire service because of that. So every little thing I did, even just at training, when you're supposed to be making mistakes, right? You're supposed to be making mistakes. I would go and I'd get scared all the time. It took a lot of courage for me to go up and try to be the first person to do something, and it did not happen very often. I'll tell you that. It's getting better now, and I hope when I'm on my next department, I just go straight back to where I left off, where it's easy, and I can do it again. We're gonna see. We're gonna see soon, whenever that comes up, how that's gonna work out. But, so that's how anxiety started for me in the fire service. So, the basic overall root of my fears is that I'm gonna screw up. That people are gonna remember me for my bad things. That is the root of my anxiety, personally. And everybody has a different root for theirs. So how do I counter those fears? Or prepare for those fears, let's say? Kind of both. especially on the fire ground. This is all really going to be about the fire ground, about the fire department in general. So preparing for these fears, I train a lot. I train a lot. There's a reason why I can't stop learning. First of all, I love it. I love it to death. It's so much fun learning and bettering my skills. I love being able to prove to myself that I can do these things. So I train a whole lot. And the more I train, the more confident I am. So that when I get into those situations where I am not confident and have anxiety, I know in the back of my mind, Taylor, you've done this 1,000 times. You can do this. More on the push for knowledge side of things, I want to know all that's going on. The more I learn, the safer I'm going to be, right? The more I'm going to have that knowledge to be able to help somebody else if that time arises, right? So my biggest thing was, I love fire behavior. I really do. It's one of my favorite subjects to talk about. It's one of my favorite subjects to learn about. I want to learn about smoke reading. I want to learn about basic fire behavior. I want to learn about the thermal insult of your gear and stuff like that and where things fail. You know, I want to be knowledgeable in those aspects because when I get into a house fire, I know I am not an Olympian or even like, you know, a big athlete, right? Like, I know I'm not going to be the perfect person to back somebody up on a house fire. I'm gonna try my best, and I'm gonna go for it, right? But I know if I at least have this other knowledge in the back of my head for fire behavior, for thermal insult, for smoke reading, safety measures and things like that, different ways to drag people, you know, with my being short and don't have as much upper body strength as I hope to in the future, you know, I have to think of ways to counter that. So if I learn all these things, then I will feel hopefully more confident when it comes to on scene or in trainings when I'm there having to back somebody else up, right? I will not feel inadequate for it. Another way I kind of prepare is I learn how to breathe. You're like, wait, you're breathing now. You in, out. That's all you do, in, out. Yes. Breathing to calm down anxiety is a little different type of breathing that I've learned. I do a really big deep breath in. I hold it for as long as I can. And I breathe out, and I hold that as long as I can. And I do it as slowly as possible, and as many times as I can to get my heart rate to come down. That is my biggest sign that I have anxiety at the moment, is my heart rate. I can tell you right now, just talking about the subject, my heart rate is way up for sitting down. Just because this is stressful to talk about. It is very anxiety-inducing to talk about, because subconsciously I know I'm worried about somebody judging me for this in the future, and it's hard to put into words, and I'm nervous about saying the wrong thing right now. So take a couple seconds and breathe in really slowly, hold it, breathe out, hold it. While I do this, I can't just think about nothing. I try to find a song that I really like, that really calms me and centers me. Currently, that's going to be Into the West by Peter Hollins. It really calms me down, and it really gets me just nice and in a good, relaxed mood. Exercise is definitely another one. When you exercise, you get endorphins. Endorphins make people happy, and happy people don't kill their husbands, as to quote Legally Blonde. So, yeah. Yeah, exercise does wonders. It does wonders for anxiety. By the time you get done with it, you're so wore out, and you feel so good. It makes you happy. And sometimes, when I'm anxious, I don't feel like working out. That's the last thing I want to be doing when I'm going on a rampage in my brain, right? But it's the best thing for me at that time. And then as soon as I get done exercising, I lay down and I talk to God, and I just go through my day, or I go through my worries and anxieties and stuff like that. And I can't lie to myself. I can't lie to him, because I've already worked out all of that energy from exercising to be able to fight it. And it helps the rest of my day so much. It makes me so happy and so calm and so centered. I love it. Doesn't matter if you talk to God. You can talk to whatever, whoever, or nothing at all. Just be with your own thoughts. Another way I kind of prepare for these fears, I talk it out with people. Usually Chris. Right? My husband. I'll talk out with him what I'm feeling, what my future fears are for calls. If I am, for some reason, forget in my brain, like if for some reason I start thinking about a car wreck and I forgot what to do in the first couple minutes of a car wreck, and Chris is right there, I'm going to stop my spiral in my own brain, and I'm going to ask him, okay, Chris, what do I do? What do you do in the first 5 minutes of a car wreck? You know, what are some things you need to know and things like that? What are the tools you need to grab? Even if I know it, just to calm me down, and it reinforces that I know what I'm talking about. It reinforces that I know what to do, and I'll be okay, even though my brain is working against me at that moment. If something goes through my brain of something I've never dealt with before, I'll do the same thing and be like, okay, Chris, what would happen if this happened in this building? You know, what would be the steps to do it? And sometimes he'll shoot back at me, well, what do you think you would do? And I would tell him, and he'd be like, yes, that's exactly right. Or, how about you try this instead? Or, that's mostly right, but this is one thing you'd change. And he'll educate me while we're going through a scenario. And that just helps in the future to put more information in my head for what to grab from, right? When we get to that type of a call. And lastly, the last thing I really do to prepare for my anxiety, for when it comes up in the future, is to run through scenarios in my head, like we just kind of talk about, but more concrete way of doing it is watch YouTube. You know, watch the YouTube fires. There's thousands of them out there. They're everywhere. And make decisions while you're watching it. You know, you first do this thing where you practice your own scene size up or something, you know, on one of the calls. Just be like, okay, this is what I see. And you start realizing that you are recognizing what you see. Then you're able to go through and say, okay, from our department, this is what we would do. This is what we'd bring in. These are where we put the teams. This is the way we'd kind of do things. Or me specifically, this would be my job at this fire, is to do this, right? And just keep doing that over and over and over again with every YouTube incident you watch. And you do that every day. You do that every week. You do that every month. For however long it takes. Maybe forever. Maybe it's just a little bit at a time. Forever. I've gotten out of the habit of doing that. I need to get back in the habit of doing that because I really liked it when I did it. Because it really made me a lot more confident when I got on scene. Because I knew what I was talking about. I knew how to do this job. Alright, so jumping off of kind of preparing for those fears before they happen. So what do I do when it happens on the fireground? The worst place for it to happen, but if you have anxiety, it is inevitably going to happen. Okay, first of all, breathe. Breathe. You don't necessarily have the time to go sit down and center your brain in these situations. If you do, take the time and do that, right? But if you don't, you just have to breathe really deeply and as slowly as you can, especially if you're in an air pack. Just really slowly, and while you're doing your tasks. When you're on your way to the scene, when you're responding, think of the first 5 minutes in your head. So I'll go through and I'm like, okay, we're heading to this car wreck. What are the first 5 minute steps that I need to be remembering about a car wreck? We're heading to this grass fire. What seat am I in? What am I going to be doing? What's the overall general outline for a grass fire in this instance? Right? If I'm going to be on an engine company going to a fire, and I'm going to be the first one there, and I'm going to be on the nozzle, what is my job? What is the first 5 minutes for me? And that's when it'll be running through my head on the way. Even if I'm putting on my air pack and stuff like that, putting on your air pack should be so ingrained into your brain, you should not have to think about it anymore. And if it's not, I suggest taking extra time to practice it. So it does, so you can clear up your brain to do these other things. It's more important. Also on the way to your call, talk with the other firefighters in your truck. You can casually ask questions that you're freaking out about. Basically. So if you don't know something, ask. Because you know what? Especially my main audience and myself, we're all volunteers. Even if you're a career, sometimes you have those days where you slip up. But for volunteers, it's okay for you guys to forget things. It happens. It does. So casually ask those questions like, hey, I forgot, what side is this tool on? Because somebody in the truck might know. And you know how much that time that saves and confusion that saves once you get there? Hey, I forgot how we do this specific thing. Or, something like that. Just ask. The next one is not anything fancy. You just push through it. And it sucks. It does. But you can do it. I'm telling you, you can. I have, and I have known other people who have. It sucks. It does suck. But you're strong for it and you can do it in that moment. You may have to do a lot of recovery later. And you're going to find out your anxiety lies to you. So, yeah, there's nothing really good to really put on that one, but you can push through it, and it does work, and sometimes that's what you have to do. Next one, with how I deal with stuff on the fire ground, is I put my pump-up song in my brain, and this is Yorktown from Hamilton, but it doesn't have to be just one song. It's gonna be whatever song pops in my head that makes me feel happy, makes me feel like I can do it, makes me feel strong, makes me feel confident, and it's just whatever happens to be running through my brain that day. I will basically sing it in my head, and sometimes when I'm really stressed and anxious on a scene, I will hum it, and I will kind of mutter it under my breath, especially in an air pack when people really can't hear me. It works. It works. Because it gets your brain off of everything else, and it puts you centered back where you should be focusing. And lastly, I talk to myself. I did this confidence box at the Les Lukert conference in Kearney. Basically, it's a big shipping container, and they have it set up to 2 different layers, and basically it's kind of like a little obstacle course that you go through. With your air pack on, it's kind of masked out, so you have press and seal over it, and you can't really see anything, and you have to navigate yourself through this maze. And it takes a while, and it's hard. And they can make it easier or harder on different parts depending on the abilities of everybody in there. And you go through it one at a time. And through this thing, you have to go through different sized holes and over under bars and through weird sections that get skinnier and larger, and at one point they even drop you and stuff. There's a whole lot of different stuff to it. You have to take your air pack on and off several times in there. So there were some times in there that I got a little more than a little frustrated and anxious. And I wasn't necessarily nervous about doing it. I knew I could do it, but there were things that were frustrating me. And I would just have to talk to myself. And I'm sure the people who were, because I wasn't talking quietly to myself necessarily. So I'm the guy who was kind of watching over me in there. I'm sure he was like, "What are you doing?" Maybe he's seen this before. I don't know. But there were a lot of times where I'm just like, "Come on, Taylor, calm down, stop. Yes, do this. No, Taylor, don't do that." It's funny, but it works. So we kind of went over those things. What do others do to help me with those fears? It wasn't always Chris. It could be a lot of different people, and there was a lot of different people who've helped me in the past with this. They talk with me. They help me rationalize the situation, thoughts that I'm having. Especially the people who really knew me, they could see it in my eyes when I was starting to get anxious. And they would be like, okay, Taylor, this is what we're doing. This is what you need to do. We got this. You know, you've done this 1,000 times. We can do it. You know, or, hey, the entire world is not relying on you for this one thing. You'll be okay. Or, you know, just different things like that. Basically just kind of talking me out of my spiral is what they were doing. We kind of went over this before, but answering any questions I had beforehand. Right? So if I have a question about how something works, or about why we would do this, or what procedure, what process are we going to do when we respond to something, answering those questions beforehand really helps. And then running through scenarios with me, like we talked about before. So that's kind of how others help me when I'm on the fire ground or beforehand. So going back here half a second to when I said you just push through it. So there are 3 things that actually go through my brain when I tell myself that you just need to push through it. And this is how I get through that. First of all, you just gotta do it. You kind of don't have a choice. You're there. It was your own decision to be on the department. You kind of did this to yourself. So you just gotta do it. You know, you don't have another option. There is no quit at this point. You've got to do it. You know, and are you gonna let these guys see your weaknesses? Do you really want somebody else to see your weaknesses? Nobody wants that. And I'm not saying this as in you shouldn't have weaknesses, because everyone does. And that you shouldn't be afraid of showing weakness. That's not exactly what I'm saying, but I'm saying in the moment when you need to get something done. This is not long term. You know, are you going to let these guys see your weaknesses and what you can't do? And lastly, you need to prove yourself. You need to prove yourself to yourself. You need to prove yourself to others. You need to prove that you are meant to be there, that they can trust you, that you are part of the group, and that you're there for the right reasons. That you're not there just to say that you're on the fire department, that you're there to help people, and this is how you show that. This is how you externalize all of that. This is how you prove it, by proving yourself. Ooh, I feel like I need a joke or something to lighten up the mood. There's an airplane going over, and I don't know if you guys heard any of that, but it kind of sounded like a UFO for a second there. It went like whoop, and I'm like, what? That's kind of a joke, right? Whew. All right, so what can trigger or escalate my anxiety? Okay, so trigger and escalating. Definitely the number one thing I would have to say is any type of unknown. So if I don't know how somebody's going to react, if somebody tells me they need to talk about something, but they don't tell me what it is, oh, that's the worst. That is the absolute worst. And it floors me because Chris just did this, like, earlier this week, right? And I'm like, are you kidding? And he's like, what? I'm like, you said you needed to, or like, you called me, you know, on your way home from work, and I was busy, and you're like, oh, I'll just talk to you later, and stuff like that. But, like, I'm sitting there wondering for the next half hour what the heck he wanted to say, and I couldn't focus on anything else after that. My goodness. And it happens with everybody. I mean, everyone does it, because for most people it doesn't matter. But with somebody with anxiety who that is a main trigger on, it's like, oh, goodness, dude. If I don't know how a scenario is going to play out, if I don't know what I'm running into for a fire scene, you know, like, if good on a call, but even if they say it's a car wreck, it's still a big unknown. You know? So, in all rights, anxiety and fire service do not mix, but there are plenty of ways to overcome it, like we just talked about. Another thing that can trigger or escalate it is a type of call I don't like going on. I do not love car wrecks. In the past, I've always tried to stay at the station and run the radio room or do some other support role if I can help it. It's one of those where it's not like I'm not going to go. If they need me, I will go. I will do the things. I will be there. I will do every bit of it. But if I can help from going, I'm going to find another support role to do instead if they have enough people. That's kind of where the line comes in. But those calls definitely escalate my anxiety a lot more than usual. Lack of sleep. I do not do good on lack of sleep. So if something comes in the early morning or midnight, and I get up in the middle of the night, I'm startled awake in the first place, so I'm already tired. But as soon as I get up and that adrenaline hits, my anxiety starts going even worse because of all that and the lack of sleep. So that's definitely another one for me. If somebody asks me something that I don't know, especially on a scene, because I feel like I have been in this position long enough, on departments long enough, that I should know pretty much everything. I mean, I shouldn't, because that's unrealistic, and there's no reason I should remember everything all the time. Little bit of everything all of the time. Sorry, I got Bo Burnham stuck in my head. That is a catchy song, let me tell you. Okay, but there's no reason I should know everything all the stinking time. So I don't know why that gives me anxiety or triggers it or escalates it when I'm already anxious, but it definitely does, because I want to give them the right answer, and I don't want to look like I don't know what I'm talking about. And if they ask me the one thing I don't know, it just makes me feel like, well, shoot, I'm worthless. I'm not. I know I'm not, but that's what goes through my head in the moment. If I'm paired up with somebody in particular that I don't necessarily get along with, I think this kind of works with everybody. They just don't love that happening. And you should trust everybody on your department, but we all know that there are people that we'd rather not work with if we wouldn't have to, if that's the best way to put that. Still going to be professional, still going to get the job done, but that definitely makes my anxiety go up to another level, because I don't necessarily either agree with the way they do things or trust that they've trained enough, or who knows what the reason is. That definitely puts my brain on overdrive for that time that I'm working with them. And then being physically inadequate myself. And this is something that I've really been trying to tackle lately, is working with my physical ability and working with my upper body strength, working with my endurance and everything with that. It's going to take time, like everything does. But that is another big one, because if I'm going into a house with somebody, they need to rely on me to be able to pull them out if something goes wrong. And I should be able to. If you're going into a structure, you should be able to. Now, I believe that you're able to use whatever tools or whatever you have at your disposal to be able to do that easier. So, if you have the harnesses, the rescue harnesses or whatever inside the gear, use those, obviously. I've learned different ways to roll firefighters over and turn their SCBAs into full harnesses and stuff too, just by myself. And I was uber duper impressed, like being able to do that. And I practiced it on a guy who was a lot heavier than I was, a lot bigger than I was, a lot. And I was able to do it. I mean, he must have been like 6'4" or something like that, and 6'5", something like that, and not tiny by any means. And I did it on Chris too, granted a lot smaller than the other guy, but like, same thing. I did it on Chris super easy, and dragged him kind of no problem, so you gotta learn how to be able to do that. But that's definitely another trigger, another escalating factor to the anxiety, is being physically inadequate and wondering if you're going to be enough when the time comes for it. So I kind of want to end this out with just mentioning that, and maybe it is mentioned. I don't know. But I listen to a lot of first responder podcasts. They're the first type of podcast I ever listened to, and I still love listening to them. Every single podcast you listen to is going to be different in the way they approach topics and the way that their episodes are set up. But a lot of them, when they talk about mental health, it seems like they always talk about PTSD or depression. And I get it. I get how those are the top two. I really do. They should be. Well, they shouldn't be. But, they shouldn't be around. I wish they weren't around. But I get why those are talked about the most, because they are the most prevalent most of the time. But I really wish more people out there would talk more freely and have more information about people dealing with anxiety in the fire service, in the first responder world. Just because I felt alone for a long time until recently, and I even still feel kind of on my own with this mental health issue in the fire service. So I hope this episode kind of helps somebody at least know that they're not alone, and maybe helps them figure out other ways to deal with anxiety. If you deal with anxiety in the fire service, or have any advice on anything, or whatever it is, if you want to talk more about the subject, I don't know, if you have something that's working for you, let me know. Because, first of all, I want to get my own anxiety under control even better than what it is now. And I want to spread that information on to other people to help them out as well. And then I firmly believe that those people who have anxiety, who develop anxiety, have a higher chance of developing depression than your average person. Again, that is not a fact anywhere. It's just something I've noticed or felt myself. I have felt myself slipping into cases of depression. Not often, but enough when I can tell that I'm in and out of phases of depression. And it's not fun. It's not fun at all. And I can see how it's really easy to get from A to B, though, when you have anxiety, because you're already overthinking everything. And depression turns from just overthinking everything into worst case scenario, into basically feeling hopeless and a burden and all the above. I'm not going to get into depression on this episode. That's not the point of this one. But yeah, if you do have anxiety, if you know somebody who has anxiety, if you have tips, if you have tricks, if you have insight, or if you would like to be on my part 2 of anxiety in the fire service, if you have more knowledge and more experience with helping people with anxiety, I would really like to chat with you. Anyways, wow, this is ending so awkwardly. I don't know how to end these anymore. I feel like they need to end a little bit nicer than this, but I got nothing else right now. Be tuned in for the next few weeks, months, whatever. Every once in a while we'll have guests on doing either interviews or co-hosting. Again, if you yourself or know somebody who would like to be on the podcast for either an interview or a co-hosting session with me, let me know. We will work something out. That is all I have. I hope to talk to you guys later, and enjoy your weekend. See ya. Thanks for coming by and listening to the podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to leave a rating and review wherever you're listening. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram @CouplingsFire Podcast. See you next time, everybody.